In the wake of the shootings in Colorado Springs at a Planned Parenthood clinic, liberals have been quick to blame pro-life speech for the violence. Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper said on CNN that talk radio and bloggers inspired the shooter. Presidential candidate Bernie Sanders called the shooting the unintended consequence of bitter rhetoric, and the list goes on. Joining us now with more is David French, an attorney and staff writer for National Review. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, David, is there any evidence that the Colorado Springs shooter was influenced by pro-life rhetoric?
None that I'm aware of. In fact, the evidence that he had a pro-life motivation is pretty thin at this point. Right now, it's resting on a secondhand source that, as part of a very long and rambling interview, he mentioned something about baby parts. So we don't really know why this man, who was an accused rapist, been accused of cruelty to animals, accused of being a peeping Tom, obviously had a host of problems not related in any way, shape, or form to Planned Parenthood, why he did what he did.
Okay, now what do liberals have to gain by trying to blame pro-life speech for the shootings?
Oh, they have a lot to gain. What they are attempting to do here is discredit an entire movement. Abortion rights are an absolutely critical aspect of the sexual revolution. They're a critical part and plank of the Democratic Party platform. They're held precious and dear by the left side of the political spectrum, the secular left side in particular. And so the arguments over abortion and the battle over abortion it's one of the most hot button issues in American life today. And so if the left can use a club to try to silence pro-life Americans or try to get them to pull back from telling the truth or temper their rhetoric while the other side speaks as freely as they want to speak, there's enormous political advantage to be gained there.
Amazing. Well, you wrote recently that this is not a new tactic, trying to blame civil discourse for causing violence. Where else have we seen this tactic used?
We've seen this tactic many times before, going back to the Oklahoma City bombing, which Clinton administration officials hinted that was the fault of Rush Limbaugh, that the Gabby Giffords shooting by a guy who was just absolutely insane was the fault of Sarah Palin and conservative discourse in this country, that the shooting, the terrible Charleston church massacre was the fault of, well, one writer said, every Southern white person bears some responsibility for the Charleston church massacre. So it just goes on and on and on. Now, conversely, when there's an attack by someone who's adopting a left-wing position, then there's no larger lesson to be learned from that. So, for example, when a assassin gunned down two New York City cops saying he wanted to put pigs in a blanket, well, that had nothing to do with, for example, Black Lives Matter rhetoric. And so it can't go only one way. I think the reality is you cannot blame free speech on heinous and evil acts of murder.
Absolutely. Well, what do you think is the best way to protect free speech and especially pro-life speech in light of such attacks on it?
Well, I think pro-lifers, the best way to protect pro-life speech is by continuing to speak. Don't be intimidated by those who are trying to browbeat you into silence by saying that you share blame for that terrible and evil act. The reality is the pro-life movement does not share blame. The pro-life movement is not irresponsible. The pro-life movement represents the best of America, so we should not back down 1 inch from telling the truth about abortion.
Absolutely correct. David French, thank you so much for your time and for your insights today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.